Does communism really works? Well, according to Jackson Hinkle, communism works, okay? But is it really true? Welcome back to the Batman podcast. Hi guys, welcome back. I was seeing this post from this guy named Jackson Hinkle. In the beginning, I was following him on X or Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, because he was very pro-Palestine and so on. So I was like, oh, okay, I agree with him on this. So I followed him. But then recently he started talking about communism and how communism works magically well in China and so on. And I was like, who is this guy? Obviously he is pro-communist, right? But is it true that communism really works? Well, I'm a pro-capitalist guy. I don't believe that communism works, and I'm going to debunk him. Let us first start by saying that China. Oh, before that, I need to mention that he is very pro-communist because the example that he gave is that China has a lot of this like shiny modern building like this. And then he was showing that China has like very impressive infrastructure and so on, which is like compared to the West, especially America. China is like a world class, has many world class cities compared to American crumbling cities, and to a lesser extent to the West as well. Okay. So basically, he is saying that capitalism doesn't work. And look at the example we have is China, because supposedly China is a communist country, right? Not. Okay. China is not a communist country. What makes you think China is a communist country? It is a communist country politically speaking, but it's not a communist country economically speaking. Because first of all, communism doesn't believe in private entrepreneurship. Private businesses, they are against it. If we were to define, if we were to give if we were to give a proper definition of communism, the original definition of communism, as per Karl Marx, then China is not a communist state, right? It has private entrepreneurship. It still has a large state-owned enterprise presence, still make up around 40 to 50% of China's GDP, but it has quickly been reduced, okay? Whereas previously it was 100% state-owned enterprise that contributed to China's GDP, these days it has already been shrink to almost half. And that is the reason why China has been able to grow very quickly lately, okay? Not lately, ever since the 1980s. You get what I mean, okay? And politically speaking, yes, it is a communist country. You have no free speech at all. Is that what Jackson Hinkles want for the West or for the entire world? He seems to be enjoying criticizing the US government. I presume he is an American. So as an American, he seems to be enjoying the ability to criticize the US government. But if we were to adopt the Chinese political system, in which you have no rights at all to criticize the CCP, is that what he wants for America? Or for the West? Or for the entire world? And economically speaking, China is not a communist country. It doesn't have a communist economic system. In many ways, it is far more capitalist than America. In some ways, it is more communist. In some ways, it is more capitalist than America. Like, for example, okay, America is very good at sabotaging billion-dollar business investment. Look at the example of Foxconn. Foxconn investment in Wisconsin. Originally, Foxconn planned to invest $10 billion in Wisconsin, okay? But due to extremely heavy politicking from the politician, from the media, and also from the local people, in the end, they shrink it to just like 500 million investment or something like that. You see, that's communism, okay? When you have too much interference from the government, from other non-profit organization, from the media, that's communism, okay? That's not free market capitalism. Free market capitalism means minimal intervention from the government. In America, you have so many labor union, and on top of that, you have so many environmental regulation you have to follow. How many regulation you have to follow? To build a house in America, you have to follow through thousands of pages of regulation, housing regulation. That's why it takes so long to build houses in America. In China, they can build entire block of apartment in less than 1 year. So in that sense, I have to add, and to build a billion-dollar factory, I mean, like Elon Musk just built a factory in Shanghai that takes a little bit over 1 year. In America, TSMC Arizona is still not fully completed yet after like 4 years of construction. Which one is freer? Which one is more efficient? It's the Chinese. The Chinese doesn't even have China doesn't even have labor union. I mean, like, they have labor union, but it's only as a symbol. It's useless. They don't have labor's right, okay? Like, in that sense, you couldn't be more free than the Chinese economy, okay? The US is more capitalist in the sense that there is no public hospital. There are some public hospital, but most healthcare is privatized. It's not public, okay? In that sense, yes, America is more capitalist. In the sense of opening up their market, the housing market, to foreigners, America is more capitalist. In the sense of what do we call stock ownership and so on, America is more capitalist. You know, stuff that can lead to high cost of living, that can lead up to what do we call speculative investment. America is very free. You see where I'm going now? And then you have to wonder why the US trade deficit is so huge. Because it has become impossible to do business in America. There's too much politicking going on, okay? There's too much regulation that you have to follow. The Chinese, in that sense, they're very free. So long as you don't speak against the government, they won't interfere into your business decision making. So is that what Jackson Hinkle wants for the West? Is that what he wants? No more free speech. Is he willing to give up his free speech? That is my question first. And then also, I'm getting annoyed with how he was saying that, look how good China is, and so on. Well, I'm going to show you this data, okay? So I remember like years ago, I read an article in which the article lists all of the 10 most unaffordable cities in the world to live in based on property prices to income ratio, no, income to property prices ratio. all of the top 10 is Chinese cities. So I just want to double confirm again, because it's been several years since then. And I asked Grok, okay, can you do a comparison to the top 10 income to house price ratio list of 10 most unaffordable cities in China versus USA? Okay. So this is the list that Grok's provide, okay? By the way, Grok is the AI company of Elon Musk. So side by side top 10 comparison table, okay? Rank number 1 for China, it is Shenzhen, and the income that you need to income to property ratio, meaning that you need to pay your total income 36.1 years to finally to be able to afford a home in Shenzhen. This is what the income to property price ratio, okay? Or maybe I should show you guys the definition. Income to property price ratio, what it means the income to property price ratio, also known as the price to income ratio, compares the median house price to the median annual household income to measure housing affordability. A ratio of 3.0 or below is considered affordable, while higher ratios indicate a more unaffordable market. For example, a ratio of 4.0 to 4.4 means a property costs more than 4 times a household annual income. So here it says that affordable is 3.0 and below, moderately unaffordable 3.1 to 4, seriously unaffordable 4.1 to 5.0, and severely unaffordable 5.1 and above. And in this case, Shenzhen is at 36.1, okay. San Jose is still severely unaffordable, but is 12.1, 3 times lower than Shenzhen. And then let's look at the next city, Sanya at 30, Los Angeles 11.2. People have been complaining Los Angeles is so expensive to live on and blah blah blah, but definitely not more unaffordable than Chinese city, not even close. Beijing 24.9, Honolulu 10.8, Shanghai 24.6, San Francisco 10, Xiamen 22, San Diego 9.5, Guangzhou 16.8, New York 9.4. New York looks very unaffordable compared to Chinese city. Make that make sense, okay? Hangzhou 20, Boston 9.0, Nanjing 19.5, Seattle 8.8, Chengdu 18, Miami 8.6, Qingdao 17.5, and Denver 8.2. So basically, the number 10th most unaffordable city in China is still more unaffordable than the most unaffordable city in America. Far more unaffordable. So is China really doing so much better than America? Probably not. The things that makes them look better is because they have shiny apartments, while New York has many, probably a lot more older buildings than Shanghai, for example, or Hong Kong. Because that's New York history. The city was established and it booms during the 18th century, no, 19th century. It boomed. It started booming a lot earlier than many of the Chinese cities. So they preserved this building. The Chinese, until recently, they didn't preserve all their historical buildings, except for the palaces and so on. But like the old high-rise building and the shops and so on, they did not preserve it until recently. So of course you're gonna see a lot more shiny new buildings in China compared to New York, compared to Los Angeles, And skyscrapers is not a determinant of how developed a country is, okay? I mean, like if you compare a country like a city like, I don't know, Mumbai versus Paris. Mumbai is going to have a lot more skyscrapers, okay? Or you compare a city like Manila versus London. Manila is always going to have much more skyscrapers because that's the appeal of European cities. They don't like skyscrapers, they appreciate their history, right? But it doesn't mean that Manila and Mumbai is richer than London and Paris. Not at all. So having a lot of skyscrapers is not a determinant of whether a country is rich or not. Do you know what it represents? It presents that a country is creating a lot of bubbles. And the list that I just provided recently, which shows how unaffordable China is currently, prove my point. When you have too many skyscrapers, you usually end up creating a lot of bubble. The same thing happened in Japan. The same thing happened in Southeast Asia. I'm from Southeast Asia. I'm Malaysian, okay? Back during the 1998 Asian financial crisis, lots of skyscrapers started propping up in Southeast Asia. And then suddenly, bam, just like that, there's a market crash, housing market crash. Same thing happened to Japan in the 80s. They were building skyscrapers left and right all over the place. And then, bam, Japan suffered one of the worst, actually not one of the worst, the worst property bubble in history, okay? Until today, their property prices is still 40 to 50% lower than what it used to be in 1990s because the bubble crash was so severe. Until today, they have not fully recovered yet. That is what about to happen to China. Okay, there's two things that I predicted. It's either China is going to suffer a severe crash, a crash similar to Japan, and they won't recover forever, and the US will continue to be the global dominant power in the world. Or the Jays, and I think if you are a follower of my channel, loyal follower of my channel, you probably know what I mean by the Jays. Okay, the Jays are going to ditch America for China. They're going to flood China with a lot of capital and save them from the property bubble. So two things can happen. But as of right now, the Chinese economy is not looking really well either. It looks like it is creating one extremely big bubble. And you want to know why? Well, I'm going to share you this next clip, and then I will provide my commentary later.
Chinese Ministry of Housing and Construction announced that there were nearly 600 million housing units in the country, mostly apartments. Now, this is an unbelievable number. I don't believe it's that high, but the reason is real estate in China accounts for about 30% of the economy, and there's corruption involved too. Leasing land makes local government a lot of money, so developers keep building. Now, the CCP is having deep economic problems because the economy is not running so hot. No one can afford to buy new apartments anymore. The pandemic killed their spending. An internet user says if this figure is true, then it is really scary. Say, if China had 300 million buildings, each 6-story high, accounts for 12 households, then that's a total of 3.6 billion households. Way too many empty buildings. Now, stop building and leave some farmland for the future generations. Demolishing ghost cities are also a common occurrence in China because no one lives in these complexes. People call it regular play to build high-rises no one lives in and can afford and then blow them up. What that means is those who paid for the mortgage, well, their money's gone. Next comes property taxes, more for those who own a place in China. Expect higher rates. I'm David saying this is State of Politics. Subscribe today for all the latest on China.
This city looks like a futuristic metropolis, but there's just one problem. It's almost completely empty. Welcome to Ordos, the billion-dollar ghost city in China. Built for over 1 million people, Ordos was supposed to be China's next big thing, with luxury homes, Massive plazas, museums, almost everything, but hardly anyone showed up. Why? Sky-high prices, poor location, and no real demand. It's a surreal place, a fully built city, just waiting for people who never came. Ordos is more than a ghost town, it's a warning about building too fast, too big, and too soon. This city is an example of what happens when ambition outpaces reality. A city with everything except people.
So they built all these apartments, condominiums in the middle of nowhere where nobody wants to live and prop up the property prices. Does that sounds like a sound economic system to you? Why do you have to waste so much money building houses in the middle of nowhere when you can increase housing supply in cities like Shanghai or Beijing or Shenzhen and probably reduce the property prices in the cities? Make it make sense, okay? Although I have to agree on one thing with Jackson Hinkle, okay? The Chinese, they spent a lot on their infrastructure. On that note, they did a damn good job, okay? The Chinese, they really speed up billion-dollar investment, business investment. Great, okay? You know damn well they are not gonna let these investments fail, unlike the Foxconn investment in America or the TSMC investment that is taking forever to finish. That's never gonna happen in China because they are pro-business. You know what? The world has become more anti-business, not pro-business, okay? And then they complain, why do we have so much trade deficit with countries like China who is extremely pro-business? You have to wonder why. I have to agree on him with one thing. The crime rate in China is so much lower than the majority of the world crime rates. It's a lot safer than probably the majority of European countries and America as well. On that sense, they did a lot of great things, okay? On that sense, they got an A++, okay? And also China doesn't have a drug problems, unlike in the West, right? What I feel like is happening is that the West, this is my observation, okay? The West is so happy to destroy themselves, okay? Destroy their own countries. But then when other countries flourish and their countries has gone to the gutter thanks to their own stupidity, then they blame the other countries, which isn't fair. It isn't fair at all, okay? Now, I know a lot of you all are going to come to me and say that, oh, it's because of American companies invest in China, it was our company, and then like because they charge such high tariff to American exporter and European exporter and blah, blah, blah. First of all, every country in the world throughout modern history use the same strategy as China because let's be realistic, poor countries cannot compete with rich countries, okay? I mean, like, we don't have the same technology as you guys do, okay? Malaysia, I'm from Malaysia. Malaysia doesn't have the same advanced technology as Europeans or Japanese or American companies. So if we charge the same tariff rate as European and US and Japan, then our industry will be completely decimated by no time, okay? So, to be fair on poor countries, let them build their own industry first, okay? Let them focus on the low-tech center. okay, assembly. And then, for example, Malaysia is very good at testing, semiconductor testing and assembly. Okay. The European countries, Japan and America and South Korea and so on, you guys can focus on the high paying jobs, okay? Like what, I don't like Biden, but credits to him, he provide massive incentive for semiconductor companies to open wafer fabrication in America. You need more of that kind of investment. Wafer fabrication, where countries like Malaysia don't have any skills in that process, you know, semiconductor process. What we specialize in is very low paid sector. Okay, you should focus on the high paying sector, and you should focus on industry where, like pharmaceutical, for example. Okay, most poor countries or developing countries, they don't have the expertise yet, or aerospace industry. And it's also just an excuse to say, oh, because wages in poor and developing country is much more lower than Western countries or Japan, for example. Okay, or also it's an excuse to say, oh, because they have high tariff, we have low tariff, and blah blah blah. That all is just an excuse. Okay, do remember that up until 2019, before America blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, Germany has a huge trade surplus with China, and they have the largest trade surplus in the world. Okay, Japan, while they do have trade deficit with China, it was much lower than many developed countries, especially Western countries. And in fact, they exported lots of cars to China and so on. And whatever deficit they got, they managed to neutralize it by exporting it more to countries like Malaysia, for example, Indonesia, Brazil, and of course, the rich countries of the West and so on. So it's just an excuse. The truth is, the West has been more than happy, the Western government has been more than happy to destroy their own economy, okay? It's their fault. And then suddenly when all of these things, and then suddenly when things get too bad, then they blame someone else. Do remember back in the 90s, the US politician was going all out to promote outsourcing investment to China. Don't forget about that, okay? And also, I reference a lot of Richard Werner's work, which is one of the most brilliant economists in the world, in my opinion, okay? I mean, like, he was saying that previously countries like Germany and America, they have a lot of small banks, okay? Small banks that ends up lending to small companies. Small companies, they cannot afford to invest in China because, you need to pay all the lawyers and so on, buy up lands, and you don't know their culture. It's very expensive for you to maybe appoint consultants and so on. So it's just better to open a factory in America or Germany. Okay. So, and then he was saying that Germany, why they used to have such a huge trade surplus with China, is because of the small and SMEs, small and medium-sized company that exported to China. They specialize, he called it a hidden champion. Okay, it's not the most like glam industry, but they specialize in stuff like machinery, or producing marbles or concrete and so on, concrete, cement and so on. And that's how they managed to have a huge trade surplus with China. For a while, Germany was a shining example of Western success of what we call success of the Western economy. the one and only large Western economy that still have a huge trade surplus. But of course, the ECB is going all out to destroy the German economy, destroying all the small banks. Same goes with Federal Reserve. They are more than happy to destroy all the small banks. And let's not even go to France and UK and so on, Australia and so on, because their banks has already been too dominated by large banks. Small banks has already gone kaput a long time ago. Okay. So that's the thing. Now, to get to my point, why China is so unaffordable right now, there was a time when China was fully capitalist. It was under Deng Xiaoping, okay? I mean, like, he did not interfere at all with the Chinese economy. He encouraged private entrepreneurship, okay? But once Deng Xiaoping, what we call, he passed away and Xi Jinping took over the leadership, Xi Jinping is a bad leader in my opinion, in my personal opinion, okay? He interfered a lot with the Chinese economy. He was the one who props up the Chinese property market. It is like someone coined it before. The Chinese property market is like Las Vegas on steroid. It's like gambling on steroid. He was the one who instructed these state-owned banks to continue building houses when no one wants to buy it. I mean, like, in the beginning, there are people who were buying it because they were predicting, oh, the Chinese economy is growing so fast and, property prices is only going to go up and up and up. But after a while, it has become too expensive that nobody can afford to pay rent anymore. So in the end, the Chinese banking system right now is on the verge of bankruptcy. And the CCP is doing everything it can to avoid this. Every time the government want to control house prices, the property market become on the verge of total collapse. But then he intervened again. He intervened and prop up the property market again in order to avoid a full collapse of the property market and the Chinese economy, full collapse of the banking system as well. So you see, when there is a government intervention on a massive scale, it's always bad. So my point is, the best system is always capitalism. When there is minimal intervention from the government, that is the best system, okay? Communism is not good. You need to have planning. Planning in a way, in the sense that, okay, this is what we want. We want to, let's say, develop a semiconductor industry, for example, okay? So you call on investor and so on, from foreign investor, and then you do a joint venture, something like that. Planning like that is okay, because that's not intervention. You assist companies in order for them to grow, okay? That is okay. But what the Chinese is doing right now, especially under Xi Jinping, Deng Xiaoping is the legend, but under Xi Jinping, he is destroying the Chinese economy. And the Chinese economy that used to be full-fledged capitalist, almost full-fledged capitalist, not fully, almost full-fledged capitalist, now it has become more and more communist. The same can be said for America or for the Western countries. Western countries has slowly become more and more capitalist for the past 40 years or something like that. It's just a fact, okay? So we don't need more communism. We don't need more socialism. We need more capitalism. Less intervention from the government. More freedom. Freedom of the economy. And also, lastly, I just want to repeat it. I just wonder, is he willing to give up his freedom of speech in order to become like China? I really want to know that answer because he seems to be such a fan of China so much, such a fan of communism, okay? So I wonder, are you willing to give up your free speech, Jackson Hinkle? And by the way, I don't have anything against China or America or Western countries and so on, okay? I have something against communism. I hate communism, okay? And people better wake up, okay? There is a communist movement going on in the global scene right now, okay? And it's not going to produce good results. Communism never produced good results, okay? I mean, like, just look at the Soviet Union and how communism was founded. How many people died? The Gulag rebellion and so on. What happened to them? How many people died in Ukraine? And the Cultural Revolution in China, how many people died? Is that the kind of system you want? Where people have no rights to talk at all, to voice their opinion at all, and they do whatever the government told, even if the government told you, let us persecute, execute X amount of people. And most people will just do it because they're just too brainwashed by the government. That's the kind of system you want. We need less interference from the government, okay? We need more individualism. We don't need the government to be survive, okay? And also, I hate this idea of socialism, collectivism, and so on. It sounds like very tribal, tribalism to me. Collectivism, or a community decides how many you should produce and blah blah blah. Who are you to tell me how much I should produce? That's like tribal, like someone at the top decides how much to be produced. No, it shouldn't be somebody. It shouldn't be a person who determines how much to produce. It should be determined by market forces, supply and demand. Okay. And also, capitalism has existed for thousands of years. Private entrepreneurship has always existed. What was Jesus Christ's job? He was a carpenter. So he was a small business owner. So to all those Christians who thinks that socialism is good, and capitalism is evil, what's your comment on Jesus being a small business owner? How about Prophet Muhammad to all those Muslims out there? He was married, he married to a wealthy businesswoman and he worked under her, okay? So his wife was a businesswoman, wealthy businesswoman. So, because I keep on hearing this Christian group, Muslim group saying that socialism and capitalism is evil and so on, greedy capitalism and so on, Well, remember who is the most important prophet in Islam, and remember that Jesus Christ, this is according to Christian belief. I mean, like, he is the son of God or God, whichever way you want to look at it. He was also a small business owner, right? And I am all for making small businesses thrive, okay? I'm all for that. In fact, if it's up to me, we should create more regulation for big companies and cut regulation for small companies. Anyway, if you like my channel, kindly subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, kindly press the like video and leave some comment. I do a lot of content on global conspiracy theories, economy, economics, politics, and also economics, politics. That's it. Until we meet again, bye bye.